we're talking about obviously the sort of black magic activity, the satanic activity in the cemetery.
Yes.
Would you say, obviously, because everybody's quite aware of the amount of vandalism and desecration that was occurring within the cemetery, would you say that a lot of that was that this group was responsible for all of that, or for most of it?
No, I wasn't actually trying to imply that.
Okay.
But you know, I'm glad you've asked that question. I'd like to clarify it. I'm just going to have to stand up a minute and get a book off the shelf, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll hold your mic.
Could you?
Yeah.
Okay, even if I'm not here. Thanks. I'll need my glasses for this. There was a lot of mindless vandalism at Highgate Cemetery, which was absolutely nothing to do with satanic activity. A lot of it was performed by cranks who were going into the cemetery, opening coffins and taking out skeletons and staking bodies and all that sort of thing. Now, I said I'm glad you asked that question, and I am, because I've just got a book off the shelf here, and I haven't read it from cover to cover, but I've certainly read the bit which was brought to my attention. And it's the autobiography of John Lydon, better known as Johnny Rotten.
Johnny Rotten.
Johnny Rotten, can't even say his name, of the Sex Pistols. He gives a fairly detailed account of his life, and the title is No Irish, No Blacks, and No Dogs. I really don't know what that means, but...
It was just one of those kind of unfortunate things. I think if you were a black Afro-Caribbean or an African person or someone of an Irish background, and particularly come to one of the major cities, where it could be London or Manchester, it wasn't an unfamiliar sight. Then people looking for board and lodgings, there would be a sign on the front window that would say exactly what you've just quoted.
Yeah.
So
Did they actually say that?
Yeah.
Well, even in Manchester?
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask.
That's of course that all changed with the Race Relation Act.
Yes,
so
of course,
when
yeah.
people obviously were running a business in which they were providing accommodation for individuals, they couldn't discriminate on the grounds of race.
Right, no,
Yeah.
I just thought mainly applied to London because he was born in...
Yeah, it would be quite a familiar sight around London.
Oh, okay, well shall I read you the passage?
Oh yes, please.
Okay. He writes, during the summer period, when we were about 16 or 17 and I was going to school in Hackney, we'd break into the crypts where the bodies were stacked on shelves, open up the coffins and have a look. We'd see which bodies hadn't deteriorated. Was this vampire thing real? Question. So many people were doing it. It was like a social club down there. You'd meet so many people, loonies mostly, running around with wooden stakes, crucifixes and cloves of garlic. We'd get bored with that. There'd be a pub at the top of the road, and we'd drink a bit. Then go back into the crypts later that night. I had, etc., etc., etc. It goes on, but he makes clear reference there to Highgate Cemetery, and he was just confirming that this is the sort of thing. He actually says here, it was like a social club down there.
I think, David, it's quite worth adding that point. I suppose you know yourself that you did feel that you were a scapegoat for much of this kind of activity that was going on.
Well, undoubtedly, yeah. Because my name was sort of in the public view, if you like, and because I wasn't really frightened of people in those days. I didn't. Take that. Redmond, I really didn't care what people thought of me. people were always accusing me of being involved in black magic, in Satanism, and God knows what else. But I really didn't care. I used to think if people... Oh, sorry, I forgot. And sacrificing cats. Mustn't forget that one. It's all nonsense. But I really didn't care. I thought if people want to think that and believe that, it's their problem. It's not my problem. I haven't done anything. All I've done, my only crime, was, if anything, was being a psychic investigator, trying to delve into the unusual. And put it this way, on the question of vandalism, at that time, Johnny Rotten, which he admits in his autobiography, which I believe was published in 1993, was only one of many people that tried to cash in on Highgate Cemetery. Now, in 1968, I believe, films were, Highgate Cemetery was being used as a location for vampire films. The one that comes to mind is The Body Beneath, which was strictly a vampire film, and part of it, if not all, most of it, was filmed in Highgate Cemetery.
Hello. The Body Beneath, filmed in the graveyards of England. A tale of terror, of vampires, of cannibalistic desires.
Do you actually think that the vampire myth evolved from that? You know, that it may put ideas in people's minds that there might be a vampire connection?
It certainly helped, because it certainly influenced people like Johnny Rotten.
And of course there was the Hammer movies as well.
The Hammer movies, I can't remember what they're all called now. Taste the Blood of Dracula.
That's quite a well-known one,
Yeah,
and if you see the film, they use quite a lot of the locations within the cemetery, particularly the Circle of Lebanon.
And there were other films too. I can't honestly remember the title of them, but all Hammer.
I mean, I think the most recent one was Dorian Gray, I believe. They used as a location.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
And it was being used for these vampire films, prior to that. At the time of the, shall we call it vampire epidemic, I've already gone into it with you quickly, basically, how I experienced, my experiences of the phenomenon there. I called it an entity. I never called it a vampire.
Did you feel that you were, I mean, I think some people sometimes, I remember my first exposure to the Highgate vampire case, I think it was like a book on supernatural and the occult, of all places, in the school library, and in which they retold the story of Thornton's encounter in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And I think their conclusion of the book was, I cannot remember the source, but they seemed to give the impression that the vampire reputation was because many people felt they had been drained of energy by the apparition and the hypnotic red eyes. So
that's
one
one
could
factor,
say it could give it a kind of a vampiric quality.
Yeah. So are you asking me if I think that contributed to it? The story?
Maybe in some way.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I just mentioned the book there, but other people all trying to cash in on the vampire stories.
I mean, I can think of one particular individual, but I remember his one particular, I suppose, early narrative, which was in, I suppose I can mention, Underwood's anthology on vampires.
Oh, Peter Underwood, yeah.
And I found it was most interesting. He had an introduction to said chapter in which he said he had sources of information, I think it was dating back to 1968, of witnesses seeing a dark shadow flit between tomb to tomb or grave to grave.
Not quite sure who you mean, but I must be honest with you, I've never seen any of those sources disclosed by anybody.
No, I mean, he doesn't go into particular detail. I think the book I can't remember what it's called, Underwood's
The Bedside
Companion, isn't it?
Vampire's Companion,
Yeah.
or something like that, yeah.
I think it's like a 2-page introduction
Yeah.
to the Highgate vampire case.
Well, it just confirms what I said. Everybody at that period was trying to cash in on the ghost, if you like, the unexplained, but maybe because it was malevolent, because of the attacks and all this sort of thing.
I think they said it was like 2 witnesses or something had seen this black shape skulking amongst the tombs, and then it seemed to appear to disappear in one of the vaults, and they just said they seen drops of blood or something like that. I think that's how this Underwood described it.
Right. Well, I can't really comment on that because I do have the Underwood book buried in my file somewhere. I don't have it at hand. But I can tell you other people trying to cash in. You know, there was one, for example, person who I can name because it was on the front page of the Hampstead and Highgate Express.
And I wonder, was this individual that may have been a source of information for Underwood? It could be quite possible.
I don't know, but he was certainly on the front page, and his name was Barry Edwards. He was a mail clerk as a job, and he ran they called their film unit the Hellfire Film Club.
Cine Club or something, wasn't it?
Cine Club. And when he heard reports or saw reports of vampire at Highgate Cemetery which were being ran by the Ham and High, he suddenly decided to come forward and say, no, what these witnesses all saw was our Cine Club filming at night. I think the film was called Vampires at Night.
Okay.
And he said it was us filming in there. Well, I immediately contacted the Ham and High, said it couldn't have been them because the sightings don't coincide with their filming, their alleged filming. And I'm certainly not saying I didn't make a film.
Am I led to believe that Barry Edwards also made an appearance on television? Because I know you were interviewed for the Today
I
programme.
believe he did, but
and there was a follow-up, wasn't there, apparently, the following week or so?
I believe he did, but I can't really comment on that because I never saw the...
I heard it was described that a coffin was wheeled in with lots of, I suppose, what you call it, that kind of smoke effect, and which he then came out of the coffin.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I take your word for it. Well,
I mean, it's news to me, but it was just, I'm only speaking from somebody who posted on My Society, this information. And I did ask him at the time, but he has so far not got back whether or not he'd actually seen it himself.
Right. As I said, I can't really answer that because I never saw his follow-up on television. But other people tried to cash in on it too. Somebody else, Screaming Lord Such, in mid-1970, and she, quite a well-known actress. I can't remember her name either.
I've seen the front cover because they're both one front cover of Ham and High, weren't they, or something?
Yes, and he's Screaming Lord Such. Well, I should say the late Screaming Lord Such was trying to plan a film in using Highgate Cemetery as a location and using this quite famous actress whose name I'm not evading because it's been in the newspaper. I don't know if he ever got around to starting the film or whatever happened, but the point I'm making is that so many people tried to cash in on it.
Once the sort of vampire tag took hold.
Once the vampire tag had been established, everybody wanted a piece of the action. And everybody, ironically, was attributing it to me.
I suppose because it was, as far as the media are concerned, you're the first person to sort of alert everybody to, I suppose, with your initial letter to the Ham and High.
It's not so much that, but but even in that letter I never said it was a vampire.
But was there kind of a vampire rumour already around even before your letter was published, early in 1970?
No.
That only came the weeks later?
Because of my letter.
Okay. I've got a question here from My Society. It kind of relates back to your encounter with the entity. It says here, how would you describe the atmosphere at that moment in terms of of smells and so on? How did the sense of time flow as you were in the midst of the actual encounter?
I think I've already answered that by saying it was almost being like drawn into some sort of vivid dream. Time seemed, as I said, it all took place in the course of seconds. 4, 5, 6 seconds, certainly not much longer than that, the actual sighting. The sense of time just seemed to stop at that, for that short period.
And with that, the temperature drop, you're saying as well?
Oh yeah, the temperature dropped. Definitely.
Okay, speaking of time flows, the one confusing element of your initial account is the various dates and number of sightings you've given over time. For example, in your original letter you said you sighted the being on 3 occasions: on Christmas Eve, the week after, and the week before you wrote your letter. By October 1970 you said it was last February and on 2 occasions, but now you imply you only saw it once, on December the 21st, or one evening after Christmas. For the record, could you clarify exactly what date you saw it and how many times in total?
I've actually clarified that question. But can I ask you, is that question from somebody called Anthony, or are you not allowed to say? We can leave it if you want, you don't know. Look, Christmas Eve, that's absolute nonsense. First sighting was at the winter solstice, 21st of December. I certainly did not say Christmas Eve. That was an error on the part of maybe a newspaper.
Okay.
It was around Christmas, so someone's written it was on Christmas Eve. No, that's false. It was not on Christmas Eve. I saw the entity on one occasion, but positive sighting, which I already just described to you.
Yeah.
What happened after that was I said, and I've already explained this in detail to the Supernatural World website, which I'm sure that person would or should have read.
Yeah. But of course, for the benefit of those watching.
For the benefit of people watching, I saw it on one occasion only. But 2 of my members of the society who had gone to the cemetery reported that each one of them had seen it once, very quickly.
And that was, of course, relates to the vigils they had.
It also relates to the time when they were keeping watch and it glided off the path. So that's really been twisted out of all proportion.
So really, you were really referring not just to your own encounter, but that collectively of your group.
Yes.
Experiences to date.
Exactly, which I explained on the Supernatural World Forum.
Thank you, David, for clarifying that for us. And I've got another question that kind of relates to your letter, or obviously the media handling of your experiences. Although you mentioned in your original letter, you said, whatever it was, I was sure it was of a psychic nature. I say this with some certainty, for it was draining me of energy. It was real. It was actually happening. Would it be reasonable to suggest you encountered a psychic vampire, i.e. a person or being who feeds off the life force of other living creatures? If so, is that why you put particular emphasis on not believing in blood-sucking vampires?
No, that's absolute nonsense. And can I tell you why? The person who's asking that question automatically... See, we're loggerheads here. For the word vampire. I've never... My God, I've tried to explain, I've tried to get it through some thick heads. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be frivolous. I've been trying to get it through so many thick heads. When I used the term vampire, it was one that was adopted by the press. Look, the press adopted the term, still adopt the term, the Loch Ness Monster. Now, if I'm referring to some experience with the Loch Ness Monster or somebody else's experience with the Loch Ness Monster, I'm not going to say an unidentified creature on Loch Ness. People wouldn't know what I was talking about. They'd say, are you talking about the Loch Ness Monster? So if I say the Loch Ness Monster straight away, they'll know what it's a point of reference. When I use the term Highgate vampire, and I called my society, another society I formed back in 1997, the Highgate Vampire Society, it wasn't because I believed in vampires, it was to try and give people a point of reference so they knew the very people that were coming to the Highgate Vampire Society already asked me questions about the Highgate vampire.
I think, to be fair enough, I suppose if somebody said you called it the Highgate entity or the Highgate ghost, people will not be...
They wouldn't be interested.
I suppose it's just like you say, it's like Bigfoot or Mothman. I suppose it's not a tag you would have liked to have been applied, but it's quite a useful one, as people, nobody's left in any doubt what you're referring to when you talk about Highgate vampire.
Well, that's it exactly. But of course, then I'm accused. Well, if you don't believe in vampires, then you must believe in psychic vampires. Look, I don't believe in psychic vampires. I don't believe in any form of bloody, excuse the swear word, but it's appropriate, vampire.
I think, to be fair to the questioner, I suppose he's more familiar with, I suppose, vampirology than certainly I am. And I suppose if somebody says a vampirologist doesn't necessarily mean they believe in vampires. And from what knowledge I have of it, which is quite limited, I know there's not always a straightforward definition of what a vampire is. So I suppose, to be fair to him, I suppose he might well believe in psychic vampires, or the possibility. Not obviously if I suppose a lot of, I know you were particularly irritated by is when people would literally talk about a blood-sucking vampire of the sort of, I suppose, the Hammer Horror tradition, or even for that to be fair, the Bram Stoker tradition, as rather than a predatory wraith, so to speak.
Yes, I have said, look, if he believes in psychic vampires, who am I to sort of argue about that? I've never said that. I've said psychic entities, yeah. I've said vampires, or entities rather, which take on vampire-like characteristics.
And like you say, certain people have said they felt drained of energy.
Yes, but also I've also used that term in referring to some of the vampiroids. Very much human beings, albeit dressed up with fangs and all the rest of it. I've used that term in relation to that. People can drain you psychically.
A living person, you're saying, not necessarily
absolutely
a spirit.
A living human being, and also maybe, perhaps, a spirit.
I mean, some people say that a lot of, I hear, particularly in terminology, particularly amongst people in the paranormal, that ghosts or spirits need energy to manifest. And usually some can say that it can be a camera drained of its, the batteries of a camera can be drained. Some people say it can actually be a biomechanical one, in the sense that it's the person's own life energy that they feel drained. It's not necessarily electrical equipment or electrical energy that is drawn, let's say, not necessarily in a in a kind of malignant way. It's just the way the entity needs to manifest itself to appear. And some people say that's why the temperature also lowers as well, I suppose, because it's almost like, the process of when you use a refrigerator, it's convection of heat, isn't it, to produce cold, and it's the same sort of principle. Exchange of energy from one to the other. And I hope that's made it more clear, your position.
Well, all I was saying is that I've never used the term meaning that psychic vampires.
I think it's quite a modern usage, though, isn't it?
It's a modern usage, but look, I don't accept the existence of vampires. There was a lot of mindless vandalism at Highgate Cemetery, which was absolutely nothing to do with satanic activity. A lot of it was performed by cranks who were going into the cemetery, opening coffins and taking out skeletons and staking bodies and all that sort of thing. Now, I said I'm glad you asked that question, and I am, because I've just got a book off the shelf here, a question. I'd like to clarify it. I'm just going to have to stand up a minute and get a book off the shelf, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll hold your mic.
Could you?
Yeah.
Okay, even if I'm not here. Thanks. I'll need my glasses for.
you were talking about obviously the sort of black magic activity, the satanic activity in the cemetery.
Yes.
Would you say, obviously, because everybody's quite aware of the amount of vandalism and desecration that was occurring within the cemetery, would you say that a lot of that this group was responsible for all of that, or for most of it?
No, I wasn't actually trying to imply that.
Okay.
But you know, I'm glad you've asked that. And I haven't read it from cover to cover, but I've certainly read the bit which was brought to my attention. And it's the autobiography of John Lydon, better known as Johnny Rotten.
Johnny Rotten.
Johnny Rotten, can't even say his name, of the Sex Pistols. He gives a fairly detailed account of his life. And the title is No Irish, No Blacks, and No Dogs. I really don't know what that means, but
It was just one of those kind of